You ever have that moment when everything you've worked for just gets handed to someone else? Yeah, that was me last week. I stood in the lobby of the hotel I had poured my heart into, running my fingers along the freshly polished counters, and watched my parents grin at my younger brother as if he'd done all the work. Can you believe it? I, Claire, the one who literally saved this place from going under, suddenly felt invisible. I've spent years climbing the ladder in Chicago, managing big hotels, turning failing properties into successes. And yet somehow it's Ryan, the guy who hops from job to job, never sticking with anything, who gets the title of CEO. I couldn't even wrap my head around it at first. My blood was boiling, my stomach twisted, and I thought, maybe I'm dreaming, or maybe this is some cruel joke. But you know what? I realized right then that standing there, feeling angry and overlooked, wasn't enough. Something inside me snapped, and I decided, if they won't recognize me, I'll show them what real leadership looks like, in my own way. So let me tell you a little about me and my family, so you can understand why this feels like such a betrayal. I'm Claire, 52 years old, and I've spent the better part of my life in hotels. Big city hotels in Chicago, the kind that never sleep, where every detail matters and every guest's experience is carefully choreographed. I loved it. I lived it. I thought I had built a career I could be proud of. Then came the call from Dad. His voice cracked with panic, and I could hear the fear in every word. Claire, we're weeks away from bankruptcy, he said. My stomach dropped. This was our family's hotel, Mountain Pine Lodge, a place my grandparents had poured their lives into back in the 70s. The thought of it failing, of our family legacy crumbling, was unbearable. Without a second thought, I sold my condo in Chicago, cashed in my savings, and packed my life into a few boxes. I was coming home to fix this. When I arrived, the hotel was worse than I imagined. The carpet was threadbare, the furniture looked like it belonged in a time capsule from the 80s, and the online reviews, brutal. Guests called it outdated, unwelcoming, barely worth the price. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. Days blurred into nights as I negotiated with suppliers, trained staff, and redesigned every inch of the place, from the lobby to the guest rooms. I called in favors, got the hotel featured in travel magazines, and slowly watched it transform. Seeing bookings double for the first time in years felt incredible. I was saving the Mountain Pine Lodge, one painstaking detail at a time. And then Ryan walked in. My younger brother, hands in his pockets. That same smug grin he's had since we were kids, acting like he owned the place. The worst part? Mom and Dad just smiled at him like he was some visionary. Meanwhile, all my sweat, my sleepless nights, my sacrifices, they didn't matter. They were praising him for handling the bigger picture, while I was left holding spreadsheets, guest complaints, and broken equipment. I couldn't even wrap my head around it at first. After everything I'd done, how could they hand him the reins? I felt the familiar burn of anger, humiliation, and disbelief all at once. But deep down, I knew one thing. If they were going to make a mistake, I wasn't going to stand by and watch it destroy everything I'd built. Something had to change, and that change had to start with me. And then came the blow that nearly knocked me off my feet. Mom and Dad called a family meeting and, without so much as a pause, announced that Ryan, my younger brother, who had barely held a job for more than a year, would be taking over as CEO. Just like that. I froze, staring at them, my heart hammering. All the nights I'd spent hunched over spreadsheets, the endless calls to suppliers, the staff I had trained from scratch. It was like it never happened. Ryan strolled in like he owned the place, hands in his pockets, that infuriating grin plastered across his face. He didn't even try to hide the smug satisfaction in his eyes, the same look he had when he'd beaten me at board games as a kid. And Mom, with her gentle, dismissive wave, told me he had more natural leadership ability, and that I was too detail-oriented. Can you believe it? too detail-oriented, after everything I'd done. I felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and hurt so sharp it made my chest ache. It was like the world had flipped upside down and I was invisible. But as much as I wanted to scream, cry, or storm out, a tiny spark lit inside me. Fine, I thought. If they're going to give him the throne, I'll just have to show them what real leadership looks like. My way. The days that followed were unbearable. Every corner of the hotel I had painstakingly restored seemed to mock me. Ryan wandered through the lobby, tossing out half-baked ideas, changing schedules without understanding a single operational detail, and yet Mom and Dad hung on his every word. Meanwhile, my months of work, the new reservation system I had implemented, the upgraded furniture I had carefully selected, the marketing campaigns that finally put us on the map, seemed invisible. It was like I was living in some parallel universe where effort and expertise didn't matter. I caught myself clenching my fists behind my back, my jaw tight, trying not to lose it in front of the staff who were counting on me. The humiliation stung even more, because everyone could see the truth. I was the one who had saved this place. Sarah, our head housekeeper, gave me a small, sympathetic look that said everything without words. I wanted to scream, to shake my parents, to make them see what they were ignoring. But all I could do was swallow the bile rising in my throat and remind myself that patience and strategy would have to be my weapons. Because if I lost my temper now, Ryan would claim victory without even lifting a finger. I mean, let's be real. This wasn't just some casual side project for me. I had spent 20 years in Chicago building a career in hospitality, working my way up from front desk manager to regional director at a major hotel chain. I knew the ins and outs of every department, the little details that could make or break a guest's experience. I had a life there, friends, routines, a career I loved. And then, in the span of a phone call, I sold it all. My condo, my savings, my comfortable life. I gave it up to save the Mountain Pine Lodge, the hotel my family had built from the ground up. It was scary, overwhelming, and exhilarating all at once. I remember driving into town for the first time, the Colorado mountains looming around me, and feeling both fear and determination knotting together in my chest. This was my home now, and it was up to me to breathe life back into it. Every sleepless night hunched over spreadsheets, every negotiation with stubborn suppliers, every painstaking decision about decor or amenities, it all mattered. And yet, despite all of that, the people who should have recognized my effort, my own parents, were handing the reins to Ryan like my work didn't even exist. Can you imagine that? It made my blood boil, but it also lit a fire in me that wouldn't go out. And then there's Ryan, my younger brother, 3 years my junior, who somehow always seemed to skate through life without real effort. He'd bounce from one job to another, never sticking with anything long enough to actually learn it, let alone excel. Architecture for a few months, business classes he never finished, odd gigs here and there, yet somehow, in my parents' eyes, that made him creative or visionary. Meanwhile, I had spent decades building real expertise, learning the intricacies of hospitality and turning struggling properties into successes. I couldn't help but notice the stark contrast every time he wandered into the hotel, offering vague suggestions and disappearing again, as if showing up occasionally was the same as running the place. It was infuriating, humiliating, and, yes, heartbreaking. Because deep down, I wanted him to succeed too, but not at the cost of everything I had worked for. I had poured my life into this hotel, sacrificed stability, comfort, and countless nights of sleep, and yet my parents seemed blind to the reality. Ryan had never proven himself capable of handling the responsibilities he now carried. It was maddening, the unfairness of it all. I wanted to shout, to shake them awake, to make them see what they were doing, but I knew that losing my temper wouldn't help. I had to bide my time, plan my next move, and find a way to reclaim not just recognition, but control over my own destiny. The thing that cut the deepest wasn't even Ryan himself. It was my parents. Time and time again, they brushed aside my years of experience, my proven results, as if they didn't exist. Instead, they praised Ryan for his natural leadership, like it was some magical trait he was born with, even though he'd never shown the discipline, knowledge, or commitment that I had spent decades cultivating. I kept thinking, are they blind? Do they even see what I've done? Every meeting felt like a cruel joke. I'd present detailed reports showing rising bookings, glowing guest reviews, and improved revenue, and they'd nod politely, pat my hand, and then turn to Ryan as if he'd orchestrated it all. My stomach churned with frustration and hurt. I wanted to scream, to shake them awake, to make them realize the reality. I was the one who had saved this hotel from bankruptcy, not Ryan. It wasn't just about recognition, it was about respect. It felt like my parents had chosen appearances over substance, charisma over competence, and it made my blood boil. But as much as it hurt, I also felt something else, a spark of determination. If they wouldn't acknowledge my work, I'd find another way to prove my worth, one they couldn't ignore, one I could call entirely my own. So I threw myself into it. Head first, no half measures. The hotel needed a total overhaul, and I was determined to give it one. I started with the lobby, replacing worn carpets with warm, mountain-inspired floors, carefully selecting furniture that felt modern yet welcoming, and adding locally sourced artwork that gave the space character. Every corner, every detail mattered to me. Next came the amenities. I upgraded rooms with fresh linens, better lighting, and small touches that made guests feel cared for. I even redesigned the restaurant menu to highlight local flavors, something I knew would make a real impression. At the same time, I tackled our online presence, updating the website, responding to every review, creating a social media strategy that actually brought in bookings. Training the staff was a different challenge. Some were skeptical, some burned out, but I worked with each of them, showing them the importance of service, the little gestures that create unforgettable guest experiences. I spent hours negotiating with suppliers, trying to maximize every penny of my limited budget. It was exhausting, relentless, and sometimes frustrating to see how far behind we were. But slowly, I watched the transformation take shape, and despite the long nights and constant pressure, there was this tiny, exhilarating sense of pride. I was breathing life back into the Mountain Pine Lodge, one carefully considered decision at a time. But decorating the hotel and training staff wasn't enough. I knew we needed visibility, and that meant spending some serious money. I dipped into my own savings, every penny I had tucked away from years in Chicago, and invested it into marketing, renovations, and small touches that would make the hotel stand out. It was risky, terrifying even. But I couldn't stand by and watch the Mountain Pine Lodge sink because no one noticed the work I had poured into it. Then came the connections. I reached out to travel writers I had met over the years, journalists who trusted my judgment and knew I didn't exaggerate. I invited them to see the changes firsthand, hoping they would understand the transformation. Slowly, stories began to appear, articles highlighting the hotel's new look, praising the staff, and noting the care that had gone into every detail. Each mention was a lifeline, proof that the Mountain Pine Lodge could survive and even thrive. It wasn't just about publicity, it was about validation. Every night I lay awake thinking about what might have been, what could go wrong, and yet, with each article, each positive review, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, all this work would finally be seen. Maybe my parents would finally recognize what I had truly accomplished. But deep down, I feared they still wouldn't. And slowly, the hard work started to pay off. Bookings doubled, guest reviews shifted from scathing to glowing, and the Mountain Pine Lodge began to feel alive again. Walking through the lobby one morning, seeing couples laughing over coffee, families unpacking their ski gear with excitement, I felt a rush of relief mixed with pride. Every late night, every dollar spent from my savings, every exhausted conversation with staff, it was all worth it. It wasn't just about the numbers, though the profit margin climbing steadily was sweet validation. It was about creating a space where people wanted to be, a place that reflected care, thought, and attention to detail. The upgraded rooms, locally sourced artwork, and even the small touches like fresh flowers in the lobby became part of the story I had built. And yet, every time I looked at Ryan strutting through the halls, clueless and smirking, I felt a storm of emotions. Pride in what I'd achieved, frustration at how it was being overshadowed, and a simmering anger that my parents still treated him like the visionary, while I was left to silently reap the rewards. I realized then that success alone wouldn't satisfy me. It was only the beginning of the battle for recognition, respect, and ultimately, control over my own destiny. Just when I thought things were stabilizing, Ryan would waltz in like a whirlwind and undo everything I had painstakingly built. He'd make arbitrary decisions, cutting services, rearranging schedules, or changing policies, without so much as understanding the operational realities. One morning, I came in to find he had eliminated our continental breakfast, claiming it was too costly, completely ignoring the fact that our guests raved about it and it was a key reason for repeat bookings. I couldn't believe my eyes. It wasn't just the decisions. It was the tone, the smug confidence, the way he acted like he had some innate talent that made him above the rules we all followed. Staff would glance at me helplessly, unsure whether to protest, afraid of crossing him, and I felt that familiar surge of frustration and helplessness knotting in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake, to make him see the consequences of his actions. But I knew that losing my composure would only give him the upper hand. Every time I watched him strut through the lobby, ignoring what made the hotel successful, I felt this mix of disbelief, anger, and determination. I realized then, with absolute clarity, that if I wanted things done right, I couldn't just fix problems. I had to take control in ways my parents and Ryan would never understand. Then came the morning that truly broke me. I walked into the hotel to find Ryan had fired Maria, our head housekeeper, a woman who had been with the Mountain Pine Lodge for over 15 years. Her crime? She wasn't flexible enough with his new scheduling system, a system that, if implemented, would have left us dangerously understaffed during peak checkout times. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Maria was in tears, humiliated, and I felt my blood boil. Without hesitation, I stepped in, pulling Ryan aside and insisting he reverse the decision. I couldn't let his ignorance destroy someone who had been loyal, skilled, and dedicated to this hotel for decades. And it didn't stop there. The cuts he made, eliminating breakfast, reducing housekeeping hours, ignoring maintenance, started hitting our guests. Complaints trickled in: dirty rooms, cold breakfasts, missed requests. Guests who had loved the Mountain Pine Lodge were now frustrated, confused, and some were even leaving bad reviews. Watching all of this unfold while my parents continued to nod along at his visionary ideas was infuriating and heartbreaking. I felt this intense mix of anger, disbelief, and responsibility. Someone had to protect this hotel, its reputation, and its staff. And if my parents wouldn't see the truth, then I would. I realized with every frustrated sigh and tearful glance from my team that this was no longer just about recognition. It was about survival. What hurt the most wasn't just Ryan's mistakes. It was my parents' refusal to see them. No matter what I accomplished, no matter how many bookings I secured, how many reviews praised the hotel, or how many staff members I saved from his chaos, Mom and Dad continued to dismiss it. They treated my years of dedication, my sleepless nights, my skill and vision, like it was just background noise. Meanwhile, they hung on every word Ryan uttered, applauded every idea he offered during the occasional family meeting, as if his sporadic input somehow outweighed my daily grind. It was maddening. I remember showing Dad spreadsheets with revenue growth and glowing guest feedback, thinking this time they'd have to recognize my effort. But he just sipped his coffee, nodded politely, and moved on. Mom gave me a sympathetic pat, saying I needed to give Ryan time to find his footing. Time? Time? After everything I had sacrificed, everything I had done to save this hotel from going under. That's what they had to say? I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and a deep, aching frustration. How could they ignore reality so completely? But somewhere inside, a spark lit. I realized that if I waited for their approval, I might be waiting forever. If this hotel was going to survive, if my efforts were going to mean anything, I had to take control, no matter what they thought. One afternoon, after another exhausting day of fixing Ryan's messes, I drove past the old Riverside Lodge, the hotel that had been our main competitor years ago, but had fallen into disrepair. And then I saw it. A for sale sign planted firmly in the overgrown grass. My heart skipped a beat. I pulled over, staring at the building, taking in the potential it held. The location was perfect. Better views than the Mountain Pine Lodge, closer to the ski slopes, and the spa area alone could be a game changer. I could already see the possibilities: modern rooms, luxurious amenities, a boutique experience that could rival anything in the area. For a long moment, I just sat in my car, heart pounding, mind racing. Every time my parents had overlooked me, every achievement dismissed, every contribution minimized, everything surged up inside me. A plan began to form, sharp and exhilarating. I could build something entirely my own. Something they couldn't take away, couldn't mismanage, and couldn't ignore. It was terrifying, yes, and a little bit thrilling, but mostly, it felt like a chance to reclaim not just my professional life, but my pride and my voice. Maybe, just maybe, I could show them what real dedication, skill, and vision looked like, and finally take control of my destiny. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about the Riverside Lodge. The more I pictured it, the potential, the location, the chance to build something extraordinary, the more I realized I had reached a breaking point. My parents had overlooked me for years. Ryan had proven time and again that he wasn't ready for leadership, and the Mountain Pine Lodge, while thriving under my earlier efforts, was now in jeopardy under his mismanagement. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it finally clicked. I called my realtor right there from my car, heart racing, palms sweaty. The owners were eager to sell, and thanks to my savings and solid credit, I could actually make it happen. By the next morning, I had scheduled a viewing. Standing in the empty, slightly crumbling halls of Riverside Lodge, I felt an electric mix of fear, excitement, and determination. Every outdated fixture, every cracked tile, every faded wall was a canvas waiting for my vision. For the first time in months, I felt fully alive and in control. I wouldn't just be fighting for recognition anymore. I'd be creating something of my own. Something I could pour everything into. Something that would prove, once and for all, what real skill, dedication, and leadership looked like. This was my chance to finally take the reins of my destiny. I decided to call it the Summit. Maybe a little on the nose, but it felt right. After years of climbing uphill, fighting to be seen, and proving myself over and over, this hotel would be the peak of my vision and effort. From the moment I signed the papers, I poured everything I had, energy, expertise, creativity, into transforming the space. Every detail mattered: the layout, the decor, the amenities, even the subtle touches that made guests feel welcome and cared for. I assembled a team I could trust, pulling in professionals who shared my passion for hospitality, some even former colleagues who understood my approach. Together, we tackled renovations, sourced local art and products, redesigned the spa, and crafted a dining experience that would rival any boutique hotel in the region. It was exhausting, relentless, and yet exhilarating. Every day brought new challenges: contractor delays, budgeting headaches, unexpected repairs, but I faced them head-on, fueled by the knowledge that this was mine, built by my hands and vision alone. Walking through the newly renovated halls, I felt an almost indescribable mix of pride and relief. The summit wasn't just a hotel. It was a statement. A testament to my skills, determination, and refusal to be overlooked. Finally, I was in control, and the possibilities felt limitless. As the summit took shape, I began to see the stark contrast between what I was building and the chaos Ryan had unleashed at the Mountain Pine Lodge. While he struggled to maintain basic operations, our bookings soared. Guests raved about the luxurious amenities, from the spa and fitness center to the elegantly designed rooms that felt modern yet cozy. I insisted on eco-friendly initiatives, recycling programs, energy-efficient lighting, locally sourced food, small but meaningful steps that resonated with visitors. Service became our hallmark. I trained the team to anticipate guest needs, to notice the little details that made people feel special, and their dedication was incredible. Watching the staff take pride in their work, seeing guests return with smiles and compliments, I felt this profound sense of accomplishment I'd never experienced before. Meanwhile, word of mouth and glowing reviews began spreading like wildfire. Local newspapers and travel blogs highlighted the summit as the new benchmark for boutique hotels in the area. And through it all, Ryan continued to fumble at Mountain Pine Lodge. Complaints, declining occupancy, and staff frustration became the norm there. It was almost surreal, seeing how different outcomes could emerge from two hotels so close together, run by siblings with such starkly different visions and commitment. For the first time in years, I felt truly validated. One of the most heartwarming moments in all of this was seeing familiar faces from Mountain Pine Lodge step through the Summit's doors, not as employees left behind, but as allies who believed in what I was building. Sarah, Maria, and a few other longtime staff members who had been frustrated with Ryan's mismanagement were eager to join, bringing their expertise, loyalty, and passion with them. Their eyes lit up as they saw the new hotel come to life, and I felt a rush of gratitude and validation that I hadn't realized I was craving so deeply. It wasn't just about staffing. It was a statement. Every team member who chose to leave behind the instability of Mountain Pine Lodge to join the summit was a quiet affirmation that my vision mattered, that competence and dedication were valued, and that I wasn't alone in this journey. Together, we formed a new family, one bound not by blood, but by shared purpose and commitment. Walking through the bustling lobby, seeing my team execute every detail flawlessly, and hearing guests rave about the service, I couldn't help but smile. This was what leadership looked like, what real dedication, respect, and teamwork could achieve. And every glance back at Mountain Pine Lodge reminded me that sometimes people only appreciate true skill once they see it in action elsewhere. Word about the summit spread quickly, and soon the recognition started rolling in. Local travel magazines ran feature articles praising our attention to detail, luxurious amenities, and eco-friendly initiatives. Guests left glowing reviews online, and bookings kept climbing. I remember the day our hotel was nominated for the Colorado Luxury Hotel Awards. My heart nearly skipped a beat. All those months of endless work, late nights, and meticulous planning had finally begun to pay off in ways I could see and measure. When the award night arrived, I walked into the ballroom surrounded by my team, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The summit was our collective achievement, but in that moment, it also felt deeply personal. Each smile from my staff, each nod of acknowledgement from industry peers, reminded me that our dedication had created something remarkable. And as our name was announced for Best New Boutique Hotel, the applause washed over me in waves of disbelief and pride. Media coverage after the awards amplified our success even further, highlighting our innovative approach and the stark contrast to other hotels struggling to adapt. Seeing the town respond, realizing the impact of what we'd built, and knowing that our efforts had created real, tangible change, it was intoxicating, affirming, and yes, deeply satisfying. A few weeks after the summit's awards, my parents finally showed up, unannounced, at the lobby. I froze for a moment, my heart hammering. I had spent so long feeling invisible in their eyes, dismissed and overlooked, And now here they were, standing in the very space that reflected everything I had built. Mom's carefully composed smile looked slightly strained, and Dad's eyes were wide, taking in every detail of the hotel, every happy guest, every bustling staff member. Watching them walk through the lobby, I could see it all sink in. The vibrant energy, the seamless service, the glowing reviews taped to the front desk, the pride radiating from my team. I caught the faintest tremor in Mom's lips, the way Dad's shoulders slumped slightly, as if the truth of their past mistakes was finally hitting him. I wanted to say something, to let them know exactly what their choices had cost and what my perseverance had achieved. But instead, I just smiled calmly. Let them feel it. Let them see the result of their misjudgment. It was strangely satisfying to witness their realization, to see the pride and shock mingled on their faces. For years, I had chased approval that never came. But now, seeing them confronted with the undeniable evidence of my dedication and skill, I finally felt vindicated, empowered, and most importantly, free to fully claim my success. After seeing my parents' hesitant admiration for the summit, I realized something important. I didn't owe them, or Ryan, anything. For so long, I had bent over backward, cleaned up mistakes, and carried the weight of responsibility for a hotel that wasn't fully mine. But standing there in the lobby, watching the team I built thrive, I finally understood that I could draw a line. I could choose to help only when it aligned with my own priorities, not to prop up someone else's incompetence. When Mom and Dad nervously asked if I would step in to guide Ryan and save Mountain Pine Lodge, I took a deep breath. I reminded them, calmly but firmly, that 8 months ago, they chose Ryan. It was their decision, and it was time for them to face the consequences. I wouldn't sacrifice my own progress or my team's well-being to patch up his mismanagement. My hands had built something remarkable. I wasn't going to let them be used to cover someone else's mistakes. It felt liberating, almost exhilarating, to finally set those boundaries. I realized that saying no didn't make me selfish. It made me empowered. For the first time, my choices were fully my own, and the weight of others' expectations no longer held me back. Standing in the summit's lobby one quiet morning, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't known in years. The hustle and bustle of guests checking in, the laughter of children in the hallway, the efficiency and warmth of my team. It was all mine, a reflection of my vision, my dedication, and my choices. For the first time, I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to validate my success. Not my parents, not Ryan, not anyone who had doubted me along the way. It was liberating to finally own my achievements without seeking permission. I thought back to the sleepless nights, the painstaking renovations, the negotiations, the late nights training staff, and the moments I had questioned whether I was doing the right thing. All of it had led to this: the freedom to create, to lead, and to thrive on my own terms. I smiled as I walked past the front desk, exchanging nods with my team, feeling a surge of pride and gratitude. This wasn't just about running a successful hotel anymore. It was about proving to myself that my skills, my determination, and my heart were enough. The summit was more than a hotel. It was my testament, my independence, and the embodiment of every ounce of effort I had ever given. And that, finally, was enough. Building the summit wasn't just about renovating walls or upgrading amenities. It was about creating a team I could trust and depend on, a professional family who shared my vision. From the very first day, I focused on hiring staff who were not only skilled but also passionate about hospitality, people who cared as much about guests' experiences as I did. Some were longtime colleagues from my days in Chicago. Others were former Mountain Pine Lodge employees who had grown frustrated under Ryan's chaotic leadership. We spent hours training together, sharing ideas, and establishing a culture of respect and accountability. I encouraged creativity and initiative, making sure every team member felt valued and heard. Watching them take ownership of their roles, seeing their confidence grow, and witnessing the pride they took in delivering exceptional service was deeply fulfilling. The summit thrived, not just because of the vision I had implemented, but because of the people who brought it to life. There was a camaraderie, a shared sense of purpose that made every challenge, contractor delays, last-minute renovations, guest demands, feel manageable, even exciting. For the first time in years, I felt surrounded by support and genuine collaboration, and that, more than anything, made the summit not just a hotel, but a home for both guests and staff alike. Beyond the walls of the summit, I realized I had been missing something equally important: my connections with the community and old friends. For years, I'd been so consumed with proving myself to my parents and saving the family hotel that I let meaningful relationships slip away. Slowly, I began reaching out. Coffee dates, casual hikes, and evening meetups with people I hadn't seen in years. The simple act of reconnecting felt surprisingly healing. I also started using the summit as a hub for the community. Hosting small events, charity fundraisers, and local gatherings allowed me to strengthen old bonds and create new ones. Seeing neighbors and friends enjoy the space I had built, feeling welcomed and appreciated, reminded me of why I loved hospitality in the first place. It wasn't just about luxury or awards. It was about creating spaces that brought people together and fostered joy. As relationships healed and grew, I felt a profound sense of balance returning to my life. It wasn't just about my professional achievements anymore. It was about belonging, contributing, and being part of something bigger than myself. The summit became a reflection of that balance. A thriving hotel, yes, but also a place where community, connection, and genuine relationships could flourish. And that, in many ways, felt even more rewarding than any award or accolade. Looking back on this journey, I realize it wasn't just about hotels, renovations, or awards. It was about resilience, independence, and the courage to pursue my vision no matter the obstacles. For so long, I had measured my worth through my family's approval, bending over backward to meet their expectations, and hoping they would finally recognize my skills. But in the end, the approval I craved wasn't necessary for me to succeed. It was my own determination, my vision, and my hard work that mattered most. I learned that setbacks, favoritism, or being underestimated don't define you. They can fuel you. Every late night spent fixing mistakes, every painstaking decision to invest my own resources, every challenge with staff, vendors, or skeptics became part of a larger story of growth. The summit wasn't just a hotel. It was proof that following your passion and trusting your instincts can lead to something extraordinary, even when others doubt you. Now, as I watch guests smile, my team thrive, and the community embrace what I've built, I feel a deep sense of pride and freedom. I no longer live in the shadow of expectations or favoritism. I stand in my own light, independent, resilient, and fully capable of creating the life and legacy I always imagined. And honestly, it feels incredible. Even now, months after the summit opened its doors, I sometimes catch myself glancing at Mountain Pine Lodge from afar, wondering how Ryan is managing, or if he's even learned anything from all this. Part of me still aches a little, a quiet reminder of the years I spent seeking recognition that never came. And yet, that ache doesn't sting as sharply anymore. It's tempered by pride, by the knowledge that I took control of my own story and built something beautiful, meaningful, and completely my own. Walking through the summit's lobby at the start of a busy morning, hearing laughter, watching my team move seamlessly from task to task, I feel a mix of exhilaration, gratitude, and a touch of wistfulness. Life is messy, isn't it? We can't control everything, and some wounds take time to heal. But we can choose how we respond, how we create, and who we become in the process. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever faced a situation where your hard work went unnoticed, yet you still found a way to shine? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Thank you for spending time with me today, sharing this journey. If you enjoyed hearing my story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It means more than you know.